At Data and AI Summit 22, which just happened last week, there were some cool announced capabilities that can further accelerate your ML lifecycle and production ML with Databricks. Did you check them out? Let's go! Hello everyone, this is MG and welcome to this quick recap video about major machine learning based announcements in Data and AI Summit 2022 that can further help us with our ML lifecycle with Databricks. Let's check it out.
Before we start, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon so you will get notified for the next video. Thank you. So here are the main three machine learning based announcements within Data and AI Summit 2022 organized by Databricks that we are going to go through them quickly, mentioning that again this is a recap video, and if you're interested to know more on any specific topic here that I'm highlighting, please make sure you write down in the comment section so I'll certainly know that what you would interested to hear more. I'll cover them in a separate video. So let's go to the first one, which is ML Flow pipeline. This is actually coming in with ML Flow 2.0, but the beta version of that is already available in ML Flow 1.27.0, I think, yeah. So what is ML Flow pipeline and what would be the main benefits to use it? So this is actually a great feature added to ML Flow, and what it does, it will actually provide a structured framework, kind of general framework that can enable data science teams and ML engineers to automatically automate the hands-off from exploration to production. So what does that mean? With any machine learning use case, you might have different steps. Let's say the data ingestion step, splitting the training and testing data set step, or training this model step, evaluation step, and registering the model. So what you can do with machine learning or ML Flow pipeline, you can define each of these steps as an ML Flow pipeline step, and then you can just reuse them, call them even through API, trigger them, and reuse them across even different teams, and they can be also customized to be used for other projects as well. And the good news is ML Flow pipeline will give you some structured template, let's say for regression, that we're going through that quickly. So you can always use that template for any regression machine learning based use case to have all your steps defined as a pipeline. And we'll talk more about the benefits of defining our machine learning steps as a pipeline through ML Flow pipeline. So in order to actually utilize this, what you need to do first, you have to configure your pipeline. With configuration, I mean, you need to define what is the type of the pipeline. As you can see here, it's a regression. As I mentioned, there's a template that ML Flow pipeline provide. I'll show you that quickly. There's, for example, the data, the location of that, what is the target column that you're going to predict. Here is an example of predicting, let's say, price. And then the steps. What are the steps that you need to do and run within the pipeline? The first thing I'm going to do, of course, ingestion the data. Then I want to split the data for training and testing or validation. And you can see here for each step, I can have some parameters get added. For example, for a split step, I can give the ratio of how I can divide my data set within this ratio for training and testing, for transformation over the training data, training, so on and so forth. And of course, each of these steps on backend will execute a pipeline code. That's why after configuring your pipeline in a YAML format, you have to have your step written in a separate pipelines. This is absolutely one of the best practices to code your steps separately. That's how you can call them within a pipeline. And of course, you can have this reusable, retrievable actually pipeline, which is portable as mentioned here across different environments. So you can have the built-in tracking MLflow capabilities all here and trigger this pipeline through API and even CLI that I'm gonna show you. So let's have a better understanding about what is pipeline configuration, and when we talk about templates for this pipeline, what they are and how they can make our life easier in machine learning. So here's an example of pipeline YAML file. As you can see, again, I'm saying that this is a regression template. Actually, let's see that template diagram before going through the rest of the steps of this pipeline. There you go. So here's the template pipeline that MLflow pipeline provide for regression. What it does, well, it is asking first, give me the pipeline YAML file, which is the configuration we already talked about, which is this one, plus these user provided codes that we can have these train preprocessed as a step to be added in this YAML file. To do so, you can see that I have ingest step, transform, or after split actually, we can have transform, train step, evaluation, and just train the model. And you can see the input and output of each step, which is coming from previous step and going to the next step. And within each single step, I have some Python codes that should be called because I have added them defined in my configuration pipeline YAML file. So to see that in action, there you go. This is the way that I'm saying that this is the data coming from, that's the format. If it's SQL, it can even support Spark SQL query. What I'm gonna predict, that's the target column. Then the steps, I wanna split the data. I'm actually talking about this part here, splitting the data. I have it here with the ratio defined, then transforming, training, what's gonna be the estimator that I'm gonna train, and then registering the model plus some metrics. So that's the way that you can define your pipeline in YAML file, and we just went through regression template. So the question is, what are the other templates that MLflow pipeline as of now that I'm recording is supporting? Is it just regression or there is more? So far in the documentation, I see that the only pipeline as of now, the template that as of now that I'm recording this video is regression template, but it has been added there that the other variety of different machine learning tasks are under active development. So as of now, that's a good quick start to give you a better understanding of what is MLflow pipeline and how it works in a regression context here. So how does pipeline repository look like when I define a pipeline? What are the artifacts involved? As you can see here, YAML file, the configuration file, is definitely the first thing that we have in place to talk about the steps that we're going to execute and where the files are. And when we talk about the steps, each step is a Python code. So of course you will have a folder, and underneath you will have steps defined as Python code. Requirement text talks about certainly the packages that you need to have in place installed to be able to execute this step through the definition of pipeline. Profile, what does that mean? That's also a YAML file. With profile, you can make this pipeline YAML file customizable. That means I can call this pipeline, but each time I call this pipeline, let's say through API, I can add some other variables or make it customizable to trigger this pipeline with another parameters. Let's say you are doing a regression pipeline and your estimator is model X. You can call the same pipeline, but this time you say that my estimator want to be model Y, and you just change it but the same pipeline because you have already profiled it. Actually, let me show you how you can call it. For example, I am calling this pipeline, give it a pipeline name, and here I am saying that my regressor want to be ElasticNet when I call this pipeline, but another time calling the same pipeline, I gotta say that this gonna be my regressor. So this is the benefit of defining customizable pipelines through profiling, and of course you will have some unit tests, train tests, ingest tests, so on and so forth. So this is well integrated in MLflow ecosystem. Of course, with having MLflow pipeline that talks with all MLflow components, model registry, tracking, so on and so forth. So similarly, you can have your performance, your pipeline's execution tracked, and you can see the runs as you can see here. And as of now, you can just do a pip install MLflow pipelines. You can do it in Databricks to actually install to utilize this beta version. But of course, the main one coming, give it MLflow 2.0. Again, that's a recap video. If you're interested to know more in a deep dive video with some codes and running them in action, please let me know so I can make a separate video to talk more in detail, having a code example getting executed in Databricks so we can have a full understanding about how this works in action. One thing before I forget, one of the great advantages of this MLflow pipelines is the fact that it is cache aware. That means if any of these steps that we talked about is not changed, let's say the ingestion data is not changed, the splitting is the same, the transformation is the same, so why you're going to execute these steps again and again if you call these pipelines? So MLflow pipeline will check if the outcome of that transformation, let's say, is not changed and not going to be changed, it is going to skip this step and just immediately run the train step. That significantly is cost effective, and you're saving the time and cost without necessarily executing some steps previously which are not needed. So when I went through this MLflow pipeline, it really reminded me an equivalent feature and capability that we can have in Azure Machine Learning, which is called Azure ML Pipelines. So add Azure ML Pipeline video that I recorded on the top right side of this screen. If you haven't checked that, check that out. That's a very similar feature already available in Azure ML, which is like an orchestrator for your machine learning steps defined in Azure Machine Learning Pipeline. And you can track them, scale them separately, run each step on a separate compute. You can trigger them based on time, based on events. So there are lots of cool capabilities, like the cache aware that I told you. It is also already available in Azure ML Pipelines. So these two services are pretty equivalent, and this is a similar feature, but now this time added to MLflow pipeline. So let's go through the second ML-based announcements, which is serverless model endpoint. So with this serverless model endpoints, which is a new feature in Databricks, it is for real-time actually inferencing for production. This will provide high availability and low latency for your REST endpoints that will do the prediction through your model API endpoint call. That can be configured through UI, Databricks UI, or even API. And the good news is it can have a customizable auto-scaling capability. That means if the model needs high throughput for prediction and there's a dynamic traffic coming in, there's an auto-scaling capability added so it can scale up and down to make sure that you can respond to any traffic coming in to use your endpoint. So it is dynamic. It can even go all the way to zero auto scaling. That means you can save the time and save the cost and shut it down if there's no inferencing. And of course, it will have the built-in observability. That means you can track some metrics, latency, CPU usage of this endpoint when you deploy it. So very similar to Kubernetes, you can see here I have the concept of replicas for auto scaling, making sure I can handle any traffic in a auto scaling manner. And you don't need to be worried about maintaining and configuring your own Kubernetes infrastructure, as now you have a serverless endpoint which is auto-scalable and can handle dynamic traffic coming into your endpoint. So there's a quick screenshot of some of the metrics you can check with this serverless endpoint. There you go. You can see, for example, you can check the latency, the request and error rates, memory usage, CPU usage. That's the average one for the all, let's say, replicas we have potentially. And here's, for example, number of the replicas. As you can see, it is auto scaling, going 2, going 3, going back to 2. So that's a great capability, very similar to Kubernetes, now serverless in Databricks. And here's the last announced feature, which is very, very great, called model monitoring. This is actually a monitoring solution that auto-generates a dashboard to help data scientists or anyone to analyze the data and model quality drift. So underneath, it is actually using delta tables to create drift tables, and you can see the changes of the performance of the metrics, which are aligned and timed with business values and business metrics, which is important for you to make sure when you need to alert the team, when you need to alert data scientists or machine learning engineers if there's a drift or any performance issue happening, which is tied with the business value that might damage the performance and the final outcome. So more options and capabilities coming in, as they mentioned. So you must be stay tuned for the upcoming public preview launch. But the time as of now that I'm recording this has been announced, and as you can see on the left side, I can see as an example the accuracy score of the model with the given time that I have specified here from range start to end, with different stages of the model for the model that is in production and even the model that is in staging. And here's rest of the features based statistical information compared to the label drift, or what we are predicting drift between this what we scored and what is the baseline data that we specified before. So again, we must be waiting for more capabilities to get announced, but as soon as they are there, and let me know if you're interested, we will have a deep dive conversation of model monitoring and drift monitoring, which is a new capability added to Azure Databricks, and we can see it in action. So that was all about the capabilities of ML-based components announced at Data and AI Summit 2022, organized by Databricks, and hope you liked it.
Never believe you are below or above anyone. Keep a humble spirit. See you in the next video.